Dream Shadow of the East Palace. Chapter 1, The Return of Blood and Fire. In ancient Cloud China, there was a majestic East Palace, where the Crown Prince Yan Wen ruled. The roof of this palace seems to be forever bathed in the sun, shining on this empire built by wisdom and strength. Yan Wen, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, a handsome, resolute, elegant and graceful man, was famous for his brave combat power when he was young. He has a deep affection for the country, and he is also gentle and considerate to the people around him, especially the little girl who inadvertently broke into his life. It was a few years ago, when the war spread to the north, Yan Wen personally led his troops to the battle. When he led his soldiers to the smoke-red land, he had no idea that he would rescue a petite orphan girl in a ruined village. Her name is Zixi, and she is a girl with an extremely special name. Her eyes are as clear as water, and her cheeks often have a touch of sadness, as if she has experienced too many vicissitudes of the world. At that time, she was only 8 years old, which was the age when life and death were uncertain, and when she was brought back by Yan Wen, she had no relatives and no home. Zixi's past is a mystery to anyone. She came from a small village in the north and lived an ordinary life. However, with the outbreak of war, her home was burned down and her family died. She was the only one who survived, and became an orphan in that war. Yan Wen felt pity for her and took her back to the East Palace, where she was carefully cared for by the grandmothers. At first, the little girl always lowered her eyes, fearfully avoiding the gaze of His Royal Highness the Prince. Her eyes are always a little timid, and those wet eyes seem to have an endless story. Brother Prince. Zixi muttered softly, her tone was extremely weak, and every time she saw Yan Wen, she would lower her head, like a deer, cawing. Don't be afraid. Yan Wen gently stroked her head, with a bit of unconsciously gentleness in his tone. There was a trace of softness in his heart, and he had an indescribable desire to protect this little girl who had just lost her home. Chapter 2, Summer in the East Palace. As time passed, Zixi gradually grew up. In the East Palace, the grandmothers love her in every way, and their meticulous care makes her more and more cheerful. Her personality also became more and more lively with the environment, and she often ran and frolicked in the garden of the East Palace. Her big watery eyes began to shine with vitality, whether it was painting, dancing, or even singing, she was able to do it with ease, like a blooming flower. But these good days don't last forever. As she grew older, Zixi gradually realized that her relationship with the Crown Prince Yan Wen did not seem to be as simple as she imagined. She often secretly told herself that after all, she was just an orphan girl brought back from the battlefield by the prince's brother, and there was destined to be an unbridgeable gap between her and him. However, whenever she feels helpless, the prince always shows up. He is like a strong mountain, giving her the warmest support. Although she had many unresolved doubts in her heart, she never raised them with Yan Wen. She just quietly guarded her wishes, longing to be by the prince's side forever. After all these years of getting along, Yan Wen's feelings for her are no longer just the care of her brother. Whenever he saw her eyes, which were always full of anticipation and longing, a trace of inexplicable feelings would appear in his heart. But he knows that as the Crown Prince, he shoulders the responsibility and mission, and must not let this relationship develop too complicated. Brother Prince, why are you always so busy? Zixi asked softly, a slight sense of loss appeared on her face. There are a lot of things going on in the East Palace, and I have to deal with them. Yan Wen looked down at her, his tone still calm. If you're not happy, you can go for a walk in the garden or chat with the grandmothers. Zixi frowned slightly, and there was a faint uneasiness in her heart. She understood that the prince's brother didn't think anything wrong about her. His love for her was more out of responsibility than love. She also clearly knows that the gap between herself and the Crown Prince cannot be bridged no matter what. Chapter 3, The Interweaving of Destinies. However, fate often carries out its arrangement at the most inadvertent time. One day, a guest came to the East Palace, an aristocratic young man named Chu Nanyu. He was handsome and chic, with an extraordinary bearing, and immediately attracted the attention of many palace maids in the East Palace. And Zixi, in front of this aristocratic young man, seems to have found a long-lost heartbeat. Chu Nanyu is not an ordinary nobleman, he comes from a distant aristocratic family and has a deep background. Unlike Yan Wen, he has an uninhibited temperament, as if he was born to disdain this cumbersome court rules. His appearance brought a fresh wind to the East Palace and also caused a new wave. Zixi's feelings for Chu Nanyu are a kind of long-lost excitement and expectation. She found that she no longer relied solely on the tenderness of the prince's brother, but began to yearn for a different kind of emotion, love. All these changes made Yan Wen feel some subtle feelings in his heart. He began to realize that perhaps his feelings for Zixi were not just his brother's love for his sister. The turmoil in his heart made him unable to express his true thoughts when facing Zixi. Chu Nanyu's intentions for Zixi have also become more and more obvious. With a gentle attitude, he gradually approached her. The conversation again and again made Zixi's heart begin to waver. She once thought that her feelings for the prince's brother had already been firmly cast, but this sudden surge of feelings made her heart full of contradictions and confusion. Chapter 4. The Storm Rises. When Zixi's heart made waves, the turmoil inside the East Palace also quietly rose. With the arrival of Chu Nanyu, the forces of the East Palace began to compete with each other. And Yan Wen also began to perceive his identity, and put the emotions between him and Zixi in a huge test. In this court full of intrigue and power struggles, can Zixi and Yan Wen break the shackles of fate and become each other's dependents? Or is their love destined to become an unfulfilled dream? Chapter 5. The Choice of the Heart. In Chu Nanyu's many approaches and gentle conversations, Zixi's heart gradually wavered. She is no longer the orphan girl who only knows how to rely on the prince's brother, but a person who is gradually growing up and longing for her future. Whenever Chu Nanyu smiled at her, a throbbing rose in her heart, a feeling she had never felt before. She stood in the garden of the East Palace, staring at the peonies in full bloom. The sun shone a warm glow that illuminated her face. She was suddenly confused. What should she choose? Will you continue to rely on the prince's brother and continue to live in this familiar stability, or will you bravely pursue the love in your heart and start a new life with Chu Nanyu? But at the same time, Yan Wen's figure appeared in her heart. The man who had taken her out of countless dark days had always guarded her with a brotherly attitude. Whenever she looked at him, the tenderness and care always moved her. She once told herself that the prince's brother's love for her was selfless, and it was her brother's love for her sister, but as time went by, this relationship seemed to change unconsciously. The emotion in her heart began to become blurry and difficult to define. Zixi, what's wrong with you? At this moment, the prince's voice rang out, breaking her musings. Yan Wen didn't know when he stood behind her, his eyes softly looking at her. Zixi came back to her senses, was stunned slightly, and then smiled reluctantly. Brother Prince, I'm just thinking about something. Yan Wen sensed that her mood was a little abnormal, but she didn't ask. He stepped forward and patted her on the shoulder. If you have any troubles, just tell me. Whatever it is, I'll help you out. Zixi's heart moved, and she looked back at the prince's eyes, but she was suddenly speechless. She knew that she couldn't say the contradiction in her heart, because once she said it, it might change the prince's attitude towards her, and it would also change the relationship between the two. And this change, for her, may be an unbearable storm. Thank you, brother prince. She lowered her head, trying to hide the fluctuations in her heart. Yan Wen sensed her uneasiness, but he didn't inquire further. He knew that over the years, Zixi may have different feelings for him in his heart, but because of his identity, he couldn't express it. As the crown prince, he understands his responsibilities and knows that he can't easily break this delicate relationship. However, this does not mean that he can easily let go of the feelings in his heart for Zixi. He couldn't help but wonder if he was also in the relationship and had become disoriented. Chapter 6. Waves Again. Just as the emotions in Zixi and Yan Wen's hearts gradually became more and more complicated, the situation inside and outside the East Palace became more and more turbulent. The appearance of Chu Nanyu undoubtedly brought a new wind to the East Palace, and this wind gradually attracted the attention of other forces in the East Palace. One day, a grand banquet was held in the East Palace, and the guests gathered. The relationship between Chu Nanyu and Yan Wen has also begun to become the focus of attention of all parties. Chu Nanyu's intelligence and demeanor made him particularly eye-catching in the banquet, and Zixi unconsciously became the object of his attention. Every time he spoke to her softly, it always caused a stir in her heart, making her feel both nervous and expectant. However, Yan Wen's gaze never left Zixi. Every time he saw her talking to Chu Nanyu, the uneasiness in his heart became even worse. This is not jealousy, but deep concern. Worried that she would be attracted by Chu Nanyu's talent and charm, and worried that she would choose to leave him because of this, and choose to pursue that love from the outside world. The atmosphere of the banquet became more and more enthusiastic, but for Yan Wen and Zixi, this grand event was like a silent wrestling. They all know that the situation in front of them could change everything between them. Zixi, you seem to be very interested in Master Chu. Yan Wen finally couldn't help but speak. His tone was flat, but with a bit of nervousness that he couldn't hide. Zixi raised her head, and when she was about to speak, Chu Nanyu walked over at the right time. He smiled slightly and saluted Yan Wen, His Royal Highness the Prince, Miss Zixi, today's banquet is really intoxicating. However, if the prince doesn't mind, can he dance with the purple girl? At this moment, Ji Zixi's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. Her gaze wandered back and forth between Chu Nanyu and Yan Wen, and her heart was full of contradictions and uneasiness. She knew that this dance might become a decision from which there was no turning back. Yan Wen's face changed slightly, but he didn't refuse. If he refuses in front of the public, he will not only embarrass Zixi, but may also cause more gossip. Therefore, he nodded slightly, feel free, please. Chu Nanyu gently took Ji Zixi's hand, and the two stepped onto the dance floor, and melodious music slowly sounded. Ji Zixi's heart was like turbulent waves. She knew that this dance would become the most unforgettable dance in her life, and perhaps, this would also be the final farewell between her and the prince's brother. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 7, Deep Love. As Chu Nanyu and Ji Zixi's dance steps were lightly intertwined, Prince Yan Wen's gaze always followed closely. Whenever the two of them got too close, an inexplicable pain welled up in his heart. He knew in his heart that he could no longer treat Zixi like in the past, and his feelings for her were no longer brother and sister. However, as the crown prince, how could he let his personal affairs affect national affairs? Should he let go and let Zixi pursue her happiness? Or should he choose to be brave and show his heart to Zixi, even if it will upset the original balance between the two? Zixi, I'm. The dance steps stopped temporarily, and Chu Nanyu suddenly whispered. Ji Zixi looked up at him, with a few confusions and hesitations in her eyes. Do you have me in your heart? Chu Nanyu's tone was soft, but his eyes were full of determination. Her heart suddenly accelerated,